Imagine you have just finished a brutal 12-hour night shift at a highly demanding job.
Oh, man. Just the worst.
Right. You are operating on absolutely zero sleep. Your muscles are just screaming in pain. Your mind is entirely fogged over. And, well, you are staring down a massive professional failure.
Yeah, you've got absolutely nothing to show for all that intense physical labor.
Precisely. And right at that moment, while you were trying to clean up and just go home, a visiting speaker walks up. He asks to use your office space and then proceeds to give you completely counterintuitive instructions on how to do your job.
I mean, I would probably lose my mind in that scenario.
Most of us would. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I am your host, and in today's deep dive into our source material, we are going to look into a scenario very much like that modern workplace nightmare.
We really are. It is an intense scene.
Our focus today is a rigorous historical, cultural, and theological analysis of the miraculous catch of fish. This is found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 5, verses 1 through 11.
And we have some phenomenal academic text to help us unpack this today.
Yeah, we are drawing from comprehensive academic sources. Specifically, we have a postgraduate expository manuscript from the Reformed Theological Seminary.
And we are pairing that with the brilliant cultural analysis of Kenneth E. Bailey. His work regarding Middle Eastern peasant studies is just, it sheds so much light on this text.
It really does. So what is the mission for our analysis today?
Well, the mission is very specific.
Yeah.
We are going to strip away the sentimental, casual readings of this biblical narrative.
Because people tend to really soften this story, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Often people read this text and turn it into this sweet little moral fable, like trying again when you fail, you know?
Right, like having a positive attitude after a setback. Just try again.
Yeah, but we want to uncover the startling reality of absolute divine sovereignty. We're going to look closely at how the creator of the universe stepped into a gritty, exhausted commercial workplace.
And he did that to unilaterally claim his initial apostles.
Yes. This is not a story about a wandering teacher giving fishing advice. This is an account of a sovereign king commandeering a human life.
I think we need to start by setting the physical stage here because the academic texts we are examining make a massive point about rejecting dualism.
That is a huge concept to tackle right out of the gate.
It is. I hear that philosophical term thrown around a lot, but what does dualism actually mean in the context of a story about catching fish in the first century?
Well, a lot of people operate under the assumption that the physical body is just a temporary shell.
Like it doesn't really matter?
Right. They think true religion is all about the immaterial spirit just sort of floating away to heaven eventually.
And that assumption is precisely the ancient philosophical error that this biblical text confronts.
Spot on. Ancient pagan philosophy, particularly Hellenism and later the Gnostic heresies, operated on a strict dualistic framework.
Meaning they split the physical and the spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, precisely. They believed that physical matter, like the earth, human bodies, daily labor, dirt, wood, water, they thought all of that was an inherently corrupt prison house for the soul.
So in that view, the spiritual realm is the exclusive domain of goodness.
Yes, and the goal of religion in those pagan systems is to escape the dirty, decaying physical world.
But the biblical worldview, which operates in full force here in Luke chapter 5, categorically rejects that dualism.
It absolutely does. The material world is inherently good. It is structurally sound.
When God created the visible and invisible worlds, he declared the physical elements very good.
Right. The physical world is fully fit to display divine glory. The sin that entered the world resided in the rebellious will of man.
It didn't reside in the physical fruit or the dirt itself.
No, not at all. Which points us toward the principle of the incarnation mentioned in the manuscript.
Yeah. The Word becoming flesh proves that physical matter is not an obstacle to holiness.
Jesus did not deal in detached, abstract metaphysics. He did not sit on a cloud delivering lectures on the philosophical structure of the universe.
He condescended to concrete realities.
Yes, he used mustard seeds, leaven hidden in flour, and, in this specific case, commercial fishing nets.
So how does this physical setting directly challenge our modern tendency to separate our spiritual lives from our secular workplaces?
That is the big question.
Because I know many people listening right now operate under the assumption that Sunday morning worship is the spiritual part of their week.
And Monday morning at the office is just the secular grind.
Right. It raises a critical question for you, the listener, regarding how you view your own daily labor.
Because Jesus does not ask these men to step into a synagogue or a temple to hear the most vital truth of their lives.
He invades their smelling, exhausting commercial reality.
He proves that his sovereign lordship extends over the common, sweaty labors of daily life. Physical tools like boats, nets, the water itself, they are fully fit to be used as theological instruments of saving grace.
The fact that God uses the physical world so deliberately means we must thoroughly understand the specific physical environment of first-century Galilee.
If we ignore the physical reality of the lake, we miss the theology entirely.
Then let us look at the geographical constraints of the Sea of Gennesaret, which is also known as the Sea of Galilee.
The sources paint a vivid and somewhat dangerous picture of this place.
Yeah, this lake sits roughly 700 feet below sea level.
It is essentially a basin surrounded by the steep hills and ravines of the Jordan Rift Valley.
And that unique topography is what makes it prone to sudden, violent windstorms, right?
Absolutely. The cold air from the surrounding mountains rushes down through those narrow ravines right into the warm basin of the lake.
It acts like a giant wind tunnel.
Yes, creating incredibly dangerous conditions for anyone out on the water in a small wooden vessel.
And we need to be clear about the economy of fishing in this region. This was not a leisurely weekend hobby for Simon Peter, James, and John.
No, this was a heavily taxed, physically grueling commercial enterprise.
I'm glad you brought up the taxes, because the Roman Empire and the local Herodian authorities extracted steep tolls on the fishing industry.
You had to pay for the right to fish, and you had to pay tolls on the fish you brought to market. It was a massive financial burden.
To manage this demanding industry, the fishermen utilized 3 distinct types of nets.
Right. There was the casting net, which a single man could just throw from the shore.
And there was the dragnet, which was essentially a massive wall of mesh pulled toward the beach by a team.
And then there was the trammel net.
The trammel net. The texts go into a lot of detail about this one.
It is fascinating. The trammel net was a massive, intricate piece of equipment. It consisted of multiple layers of linen mesh designed to entangle the fish.
And operating these nets was strictly a night operation.
Strict night operation, yes. The biological realities of the lake dictated their schedule. You could not successfully use a trammel net during the heat of the day.
Let us unpack the biology of the fish for a moment, because the texts provide some amazing details here.
The primary commercial fish in the Sea of Galilee, often called the musht, or St. Peter's fish, fed exclusively during the dark hours.
They would rise to the surface and congregate near the shoreline.
Specifically around freshwater thermal springs.
Places like Ain et Tabiga.
Yes, Ain et Tabiga. These thermal springs brought mineral-rich sediment and oxygen into the lake, creating just the perfect feeding ground for the fish at night.
So the fishermen knew precisely where to position their boats in the dark to intercept these feeding schools.
They had it down to a science. But during the daytime, the entire ecosystem shifted.
Right, as the sun came up and the surface water warmed, the fish would retreat.
They went down to the colder, deeper waters of the lake. They would hide under rocks and ledges in the depths.
And here's a crucial detail from the source material. The water in the Sea of Galilee was quite clear.
Very clear. So if you tried to use those coarse hand-spun linen nets during the day, the fish could easily see them.
They would simply swim right around the thick ropes and avoid capture entirely.
Which brings us to the sheer exhaustion and frustration Simon Peter is experiencing in the opening verses of Luke 5.
Catching nothing all night was not just a minor disappointment for him.
It was a severe financial blow.
It meant zero income to pay those heavy taxes we mentioned.
Zero income to maintain their boats, and zero food to provide for their extended families.
The physical toll of that failure is immense. Their work was not over just because they caught nothing.
No, the academic texts point out a grueling reality regarding first-century equipment.
These nets were made of natural linen fibers.
And after a night in the lake, they were encrusted with salt, silt, and bacteria.
They had to be painstakingly washed, repaired by hand, and laid out to dry in the hot sun.
If the fishermen left them wet and unwashed in a pile, the natural fibers would literally rot away.
That would destroy their most valuable capital equipment.
So, when Jesus walks up to the shoreline, Simon is operating on zero sleep, massive professional frustration, and physical agony from hauling empty, wet nets all night.
Into that exact moment of absolute depletion, Jesus approaches.
But there is a massive social dynamic at play here that we cannot overlook.
If we want to understand Simon's behavior, we have to look back at the immediate context from Luke chapter 4.
Yes, just prior to this event on the beach, Jesus had entered Simon's home in Capernaum.
And he miraculously healed Simon's mother-in-law from a severe, life-threatening fever.
That one detail alters everything about how we read this interaction on the beach.
According to Kenneth E. Bailey's cultural analysis, the Middle Eastern honor-shame and reciprocity system was the dominant social framework of the day.
It dictated all relationships. Because Jesus healed his family member, Simon owes a massive social debt to this rabbi.
He is culturally bound by that debt.
Completely. When Jesus is pressed by the crowd on the shoreline, he climbs into Simon's boat and asks him to put out a little from the land.
He wants to use the vessel as a floating pulpit.
And Simon literally cannot refuse. The cultural obligation prevents him from saying no.
Even though he is completely exhausted, his muscles are burning, and he just wants to go home to sleep.
He has to oblige the man who restored his household.
I want to push on this for a second because it almost sounds like Jesus is manipulating the cultural rules here to force Simon into compliance.
I can see why it looks that way to modernize.
Is Jesus just using a guilt trip to get a free boat rental?
No, it is not manipulation. It is a calculated, sovereign intrusion.
Jesus leverages a cultural obligation not to exploit Simon, but to isolate him from the pressing crowd.
He puts Simon in a position where his self-reliance is going to be completely dismantled.
Jesus gets Simon into the boat, pushes away from the shore, and creates a captive audience of one.
He isolates Simon in the boat, setting up a highly structured sequence of events.
The postgraduate manuscript notes that the sequence is not random at all.
Not even a little bit. The authors of that era, operating under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, use specific literary structures to convey theological truth to their readers.
They utilized what is called the prophetic rhetorical template,
which is technically known as a chiasm.
This text features a sophisticated 7-stanza inverted structural design.
The presence of this structure proves the text originates from a highly literate Jewish theological environment.
It mirrors the literary architecture used by Old Testament prophets like Isaiah.
For the listener who might not be familiar with ancient literary devices, a chiasm operates like a conceptual mirror, or maybe a staircase.
You have parallel points that step inward toward a central climax and then step back outward in reverse order.
Let us walk through this specific symmetry in Luke chapter 5 to see how Luke constructed the narrative.
We begin with step 1, which we can call stanza A. The boat goes out from the land.
This represents Simon's temporary, reluctant physical cooperation with Jesus teaching the crowd. Then we step inward to stanza B. After the teaching concludes, we see the divine mandate to catch fish.
Jesus tells Simon to launch out into the deep and let down the nets. This is a purely physical command concerning his secular profession.
We step inward again to stanza C, Simon's skeptical response. He points out his utter exhaustion and the professional absurdity of the command, noting that they toiled all night and caught nothing.
And then we reach the absolute center of the structure, stanza D.
The climax, the supernatural catch of fish, a raw, unexplainable nature miracle where the nets begin to break.
From that climax, we step back outward to stanza C prime, Simon's penitent submission.
He falls down at Jesus' knees. This perfectly parallels his initial skeptical response in the first half of the structure.
We step out again to stanza B prime, the divine mandate to catch men.
A spiritual command that perfectly parallels the earlier physical command to catch fish.
And finally, we reach the conclusion, stanza A prime.
The boats return to the shore, resulting in total discipleship where they leave everything to follow him.
Which perfectly mirrors the boat going out at the beginning of the narrative.
Recognizing this structure forces a reader to stop looking at this story as a motivational speech about trying again.
I know people who read this and think, well, if at first you don't succeed, try again because Jesus might bless your second attempt.
Oh, I hear that all the time. But when you realize the literary arrow of the chiasm points directly to the center, all your attention focuses on the terrifying, unexplainable miracle.
The writers of Scripture use this architectural design to signal the reader to look at the center point.
The encased nature miracle is the divine catalyst that shatters human pride.
It is not about Peter's resilience.
No, it is about Christ's terrifying dominion over creation.
Looking at the center of this literary structure leads us to examine the specific verbal exchange that occurs right before and right after that central miracle.
The linguistic evidence provided in the Greek text reveals a completely shattered paradigm in Simon's mind.
We must first look at the reluctant professional. In verse 5, Simon's initial response to the command to fish is very telling.
He addresses Jesus using the Greek term epistates.
Epistates translates roughly to master, boss, or supervisor.
It shows polite recognition of a religious teacher. Simon is fulfilling his social obligation by using a respectful title.
But the academic commentary notes that the word carries a distinct undertone of professional condescension in this specific context.
Oh, totally. Simon is essentially communicating, you are the master of theology, and I respect that, but I am the master of this lake, and you know nothing about commercial fishing.
He also adds a qualifying phrase stating that they have toiled to the point of exhaustion.
The Greek word used is kopiosantes. It denotes strenuous, back-breaking, agonizing labor.
He fully expects Jesus' command to fail.
He is only lowering the nets because he owes Jesus a favor, not because he believes there are fish in the deep water during the daytime.
But then the nets are lowered.
And the creation immediately obeys its creator.
The nets begin to break under the sheer volume of the catch. And the cultural research brings out an incredible historical detail right here regarding silent hand signals.
This is one of my favorite parts. Verse 7 says they signaled, or beckoned, to their partners in the other boat to come and help them.
The Greek term is katnusin. A modern reader might wonder why they did not just yell for help.
Right, they are in a crisis, the nets are tearing, the boat is sinking. Why wave silently?
Because of the physics of sound traveling over water.
The research notes that sound carries up to 7 times further over water than it does over land.
If Simon had shouted for James and John, his voice would have bounced across the surface of the clear lake, straight to the competitors on the shoreline.
And those competitors would have rushed out in their own boats to steal the commercial windfall.
So they are desperately trying to protect their financial interests with silent, frantic hand gestures.
It is a tiny historical detail, but it entirely authenticates the eyewitness nature of the account.
A later fabricator writing a theological myth does not invent a detail like that.
You only include that specific action if you were there, operating under those specific economic pressures.
I love details like that because they really anchor the text in reality. But once the partners arrive, both boats are filled so heavily with fish that they begin to sink.
The gunnels are dipping below the waterline.
And at that exact moment of impending disaster, Simon's vocabulary shifts entirely.
He abandons the polite, patronizing term epistates.
He falls down at Jesus' knees among the flopping fish, and he calls him Kyrios.
Sovereign Lord, it is the confession of a ruined man.
His professional pride has evaporated in an instant.
He realizes he's not dealing with a wandering rabbi or a clever teacher. He realizes he is dealing with the sovereign Lord of the cosmos.
It makes me think of an analogy. Imagine you are in a heated debate about company policy with someone you assume is just a colleague from another department.
Okay, I can picture that.
You are being polite, but you are absolutely convinced you know better. You are patronizing them, and then a manager whispers in your ear, and you realize you have been arguing with the billionaire CEO who owns the entire parent company.
Oh, wow. The blood would just drain from your face.
Except we have to multiply that feeling of dread by infinity, because Peter realizes he's speaking to the creator of the universe.
That realization that Jesus is Kyrios triggers an immediate, terrified reaction.
And this reaction makes perfect sense when we look at the strict religious laws of his day.
Peter cries out, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man."
The manuscript notes this is the first time the word hamarsalos, sinner, appears in Luke's gospel.
To understand why Peter reacts with such horror, we have to look at the Christological fulfillment taking place here.
We have to frame the miracle theologically, going all the way back to the Psalms.
Jesus is exercising uncontested dominion over the unseen depths, directing the fish precisely into the nets during the middle of the day.
This fulfills Psalm 8.
That psalm speaks of the ideal man, the second Adam, who exercises dominion over the fish of the sea and whatever passes along the paths of the seas.
Jesus demonstrates he is the incarnate creator God who governs all secondary causes and all creaturely movements.
And that supreme, raw authority creates a massive problem for Peter, which the scholars call the holiness problem.
Under the Old Testament Levitical system, holiness was entirely defensive, wasn't it?
Yes, it was highly susceptible to contamination.
If we read the book of Leviticus, we see that if an unclean thing touched a clean thing, the clean thing was instantly defiled.
If a person with a skin disease touched a healthy person, the healthy person became ritually unclean.
If someone touched a dead body, they absorbed the impurity of death.
The purity did not transfer to the unclean person. The impurity transferred to the clean person.
It was a one-way street of defilement.
So when Peter, a self-confessed sinful man, realizes he is trapped in a tiny, sinking wooden boat just inches away from the absolute raw holiness of God.
His theological instinct is sheer terror.
He fully expects the holiness of Christ to consume him on the spot, or at the very least to demand immediate separation.
That is why he screams, "Depart from me."
But we see a staggering shift here. We see the offensive holiness of grace.
A radical redemptive reversal takes place in the boat.
Christ brings an aggressive, life-giving holiness that operates in the opposite direction of the Levitical code.
When the pure Christ touches the impure sinner, the impure is sovereignly cleansed.
The uncleanness does not defile the clean. The clean purifies the unclean.
Jesus does not run away. He does not demand that Peter jump out of the boat.
He provides substitutionary grace and comfort. He looks at this terrified, ruined, exhausted fisherman and says, "Do not be afraid."
He speaks peace right into the terror.
I think this prompts a reflective question for you, the listener.
Yeah. How often do you assume your own moral failures disqualify you from the presence of God?
How often do you operate under a defensive holiness mindset, thinking you need to clean yourself up before you can approach him?
Completely missing the reality that Christ's aggressive holiness runs toward the sinner to cleanse them.
It is a beautiful reality that shatters our legalistic assumptions.
But we need to keep moving through the narrative because Christ cleanses Peter not just to leave him there in a state of passive gratitude.
Right. Why transition from breaking the man to employing him?
He cleanses him to fundamentally alter his vocation and establish a brand new administration.
The academic texts make a heavy point here regarding the genesis of the apostolate.
The redemptive historical shift occurring in this sinking boat is seismic.
This event marks the formal institution of the New Testament apostolic office.
And we must understand that this is not a continuation of an old system. It is a completely new creation.
It is entirely distinct from the Old Covenant Levitical priesthood.
You did not have to be born into the tribe of Levi to hold this new office.
It is also completely distinct from the rabbinic academies in Jerusalem.
Jesus does not go to the elite schools of the Pharisees to recruit his leaders. He goes to the muddy, smelling docks of Galilee.
The nature of this calling is entirely monergistic.
Monergistic grace is a theological term, meaning it is a sovereign act of God working alone without the cooperation of human will.
The grace of God acts unilaterally to accomplish its purpose.
Let us trace how this plays out for Peter, because his will was definitely not cooperating at the start.
No, Peter did not seek Jesus out. He did not sign up for a discipleship seminar.
He was culturally coerced into proximity because of the healing of his mother-in-law.
His obedience to let down the nets was skeptical, reluctant, and borderline insulting.
Yet, divine grace bypassed his natural resistance entirely.
The sovereign decree of Christ was effectual. It accomplished what it intended to accomplish regardless of Peter's initial attitude.
And we need to look at the specific commission Christ gives him. Jesus says, "From now on, you will be catching men."
The Greek participle used here is zogron.
The linguistic analysis is fascinating here. Standard fishing terms in the first century meant catching fish to kill them.
You pull them out of their watery life source, you throw them in a basket, and they die.
But zogron means to capture alive or to rescue from death.
The mission of the apostles is a sovereign rescue operation.
They will no longer catch living fish to bring them to death.
They will catch dead sinners to bring them, by sovereign grace, into eternal life.
I cannot help but point out the brilliance of God using unlettered fishermen for this inaugural role.
It is staggering. By choosing common laborers who smelled like the lake, God ensured that the sheer effectiveness of the early church would clearly be seen as originating from God alone.
When the Roman Empire was eventually turned upside down by these men, nobody could attribute it to elite human status, political connections, or advanced philosophical education.
The glory goes entirely to the king who called them.
The sheer weight of this sovereign calling acts as a devastating critique of many modern theological frameworks.
The expository manuscript we are referencing insists that this text is a double-edged sword.
It comforts the terrified sinner, but it violently strikes down false teachings.
Let us unpack these polemical applications, because the manuscript pulls no punches here.
The text systematically dismantles several popular errors. First, it demolishes the modern prosperity gospel.
The prosperity gospel teaches that Jesus came to secure your financial fortune, to make you materially wealthy, and to guarantee your best life now.
But analyze the ending of this narrative. Simon, James, and John received the largest commercial windfall of their entire lives.
The sheer volume of fish is enough to make them incredibly wealthy, to pay off all their oppressive taxes, to expand their fleet of boats.
And what do they do with the biggest payload of their career.
They walk away from it.
They abandon the fish, they abandon the expensive nets.
They leave the boat sitting on the shore to follow a penniless savior who has no place to lay his head.
True faith de-absolutizes material wealth.
The financial blessing was just a tool to reveal the majesty of the blesser. When they saw the king, the treasure meant absolutely nothing to them.
Second, this narrative refutes synergism.
Synergism is the theological idea that salvation is a cooperative effort between autonomous human free will and divine grace.
The idea that God does his part and you have to do your part to make salvation work.
It is so tempting to read this story and think, well, Peter got the miracle because he was obedient.
Like he did his part by rowing out and lowering the net, so God did his part by providing the fish.
But if we look closely at the narrative we just discussed, Peter is actively protesting.
He is exhausted, he is patronizing, and his will is reluctant.
He is not cooperating. He is yielding under protest.
Christ's sovereign decree was effectual regardless of Peter's poor attitude.
Oh, God's grace subdued his rebellious will, crushed his pride, and made him willing.
Third, this text rebukes seeker-sensitive pragmatism in modern religious practice.
This is a massive issue today.
There is a prevalent notion that religion should be comfortable, that a church service should coddle your self-esteem, keep things light, and avoid talking about heavy topics like sin and divine wrath.
But look at the text. When Peter met the actual historical Christ, he was not made to feel comfortable.
He was not given a motivational talk about his potential.
He was seized with holy terror. He was crushed by the conviction of his total depravity.
He fell to his knees in the muck of the boat, begging the Lord to depart.
That crushing realization of sin was the necessary prerequisite for receiving the sweet comfort of grace.
True encounters with the living God do not coddle the human ego. They shatter it completely.
Fourth, the sources use this specific text to defend cessationism.
They clarify the historical purpose of this specific nature miracle.
Cessationism maintains that the extraordinary, miraculous signs like healing the sick with a touch, raising the dead, or commanding the forces of nature belonged exclusively to the apostolic era.
This net-tearing, boat-sinking miracle was a non-repeatable credential designed to authenticate the foundational office of the apostles.
It was not a blueprint for modern leaders to expect ongoing supernatural nature miracles in their daily ministries.
It proved Peter's authority came directly from the Creator, validating the doctrines he would later write in the New Testament epistles.
Once that foundation was laid, the credentialing miracles ceased to be the normative experience of the church.
We have covered a massive amount of historical and theological ground today.
And it requires us to ask you, the listener, to examine your own religious framework.
Are you treating God as a cosmic tool to fill your nets with career success, wealth, and physical comfort?
Or are you willing to leave the full nets on the shore when he calls you to follow him?
This brings us to the ultimate demand of the text, which requires a response from every single person who reads it.
This is not just ancient history. It is a present reality.
The overarching theme of Luke 5 is the absolute claim of King Jesus.
The Lord Jesus Christ does not negotiate for a percentage of your time.
He does not ask for a minor convenient place on your priority list among your hobbies and career goals.
He claims absolute lordship over everything.
Your skills, your career, your material goods, your family, your future.
He is the Lord of the deep waters, the Lord of the commercial catch, and the sovereign Lord of the human soul.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to turn over in your mind as we conclude this deep dive.
Think back to that opening image we discussed.
The total exhaustion of a brutal night shift, the sheer frustration of failure, the aching muscles.
Now replace that confusion and fatigue with the terrifying clarity of what happened on the Sea of Galilee.
Consider the absolute silence on that shoreline as the three men walked away from the sinking boats overflowing with the greatest catch of their lives.
Think about what it means that possessing Christ is worth abandoning the greatest earthly success you could ever achieve.
Ask yourself right now, what full nets are you currently gripping too tightly to follow him?
The answer to that question reveals precisely who is the Lord of your life.
Thank you for joining us on Reformed Thinking. Keep reading, keep questioning, and we will see you on the next deep dive.